The last set of religions and philosophies we're going to look at here in the classical era is going to be the Indian religions known as Hinduism and Buddhism. Both these developed in India. Hinduism comes first, and then Buddhism will come later and branch off of that. So, starting off here, Hinduism. We don't know a specific founder. It just kind of showed up in India in our records. There isn't credit to anyone, but we see it slowly evolve, possibly from the Indus Valley civilizations to the Aryan civilizations and the civilizations that are in India after that. And this is a slightly different religion than any of the other major religions in that it's polytheistic, but it's also what we call monistic, where there's one God, one overarching spirit throughout everything, and then all the other gods are just images of that God, going back to that one God, which is kind of maybe a little confusing and crazy. From our perspective of the traditional religions of a Christianity that you might know more about, Judaism or Islam, but this was all in an order. This kind of evolves because of the diversity in India, and so they have three main gods that you might go and see a temple for that are worshipped the most: Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. But all of them are part of this universal God, or this universal spirit, as they look at it, called Brahman. And so it takes the shape of all religions. So they would argue that Jesus is a image of this, and any other God you have. So a little bit different, but still follows the same basics on any other religion, that you have it there to explain the world and why it is the way it is. Now, holy books, they have several holy books. There isn't just one. You have the Vedas, you have the Upanishads, the Bhagavad Gita, the Ramayana. You might see I have asterisked a couple of them because those ones come after Buddhism, okay, and they're in a response to what happens with Buddhism and the rise of it. So keep those in mind for that. But these are what guide and give the Hindus ideas on, or gives them the practices of what they believe and what they'll do. So, what do they believe? There are a couple things. The teachings teach about a caste system, in that you have a ranking of people, and it's all based on their color of skin and their duties and jobs they have. So, we're not going to look at that a ton here because we're going to talk about that next week when we look at social classes. But you have this thing called the caste system, and you need to follow what your job is. And then if you follow what your job is, it's called dharma, or you're doing your duty. And so your goal is to do that, and if you do that, things are going to be good. Okay? And if you keep doing that, you do a good job with that, you might reach something called moksha, which is releasing yourself from this cycle of samsara. And samsara is this idea of that when you die, you are reincarnated again. But you are not reincarnated as the same person, and you are not necessarily reincarnated as the same class. If you are a good person in a lower class, you're going to rise up and become one of the upper classes. If you are a bad person in one of the upper classes, or a bad person in your class, you might stay at that class or go down classes. So one of the castes is called the Brahmin, that's the top class, and the lowest one is called a Dalit, or an untouchable. And if you're a good Dalit, you do your jobs, you do whatever, you might jump up from that when you die and go into your next life. And so this idea of doing the good or the bad and coming from that, or good things come from doing good and bad things come from doing bad, is this idea of karma, and karma comes from this. And so you want to build up your karma. So that's kind of the goals in a nutshell. And one other thing that comes from this is a lot of patriarchy. Okay, it's a patriarchal system. Women aren't viewed as necessarily positives. They were kind of equal to begin with, and then it becomes more and more and more patriarchal, and that women are viewed as unclean. At some points, they're not allowed to take part in the religious rituals of Hinduism. And at other points in history, they're going to ask to perform this rite of sati. And sati is when your husband dies, you've got to jump on his funeral pyre with him. And if you do that, you're going to have good dharma, and therefore you're going to go upper class. You might not be a woman anymore. You might become a man in your next life. And so then you can actually get released from this cycle of samsara, because women were not viewed as able to reach moksha early on in this. So you would try to do your best to um, be good, do what you had to do, but again, rights get lessened. We have things like arranged marriages from this practice, or that come about in India. That becomes a common part of culture, and with that, sometimes you're 12 years old and being arranged in a marriage to someone that's significantly older than you, which then hurts women's rights because if you're a 12-year-old that's married to a 30-year-old, there isn't much that you can speak up and say. You're kind of going to be controlled by them. So. Some of those things get reformed, and today in Hinduism we can see there are still arranged marriages, but not. That's starting to change a little bit. You have less of those child marriages. So the practices are being reformed in the modern day, but back then you have some of these things that um, going on, like sati and child marriages. Now, because of some of the inequity in Hinduism, especially with the lower castes, um, a new religion will form out of that, and that will be founded by a guy named Siddhartha Gautama, and he will found something called Buddhism. Now, his main goal is just to kind of reform Hinduism, similar to what we saw with Jesus. However, he wasn't trying to claim that he was God or anything like that. He was just trying to actually go out and teach people, here's how you can reach nirvana. You don't have to go through several lives to reach nirvana or to reach moksha, which nirvana is going to be the same as moksha here. But you can do it in one lifetime. And to do this, you need to know my teachings, the ideas, and what I found. And so he was a prince at one point, and then saw the suffering in the world and left his job as a prince, or his possibility of becoming a prince, and then went into the world and tried to uncover why are things the way they are, and how can we make things better. And so he came up with this philosophy that in the Four Noble Truths that says life is suffering. Okay. And so, therefore, we have to try to end suffering to make our lives better and to reach this idea of enlightenment. And so, to do this, he created the Eightfold Path, which teaches you how to end suffering by having the right actions, having the right mindset, not treating people poorly. And in this, everyone is equal. There is no one that's above someone else. Okay, everyone is equal in this. And so, this gets rid of the caste system. He completely says that no, the caste system is not necessary. It's not something that should be here because everyone is equal. Everyone is part of the same spirit, and that spirit is kind of what the same thing as Brahman. Okay, he still has that going on. So he goes around teaching this throughout his life, and it will become a major religion. It will appeal to all the castes, but especially the lowest caste because they can get out of that caste that they're in and they can live a decent life. It's going to become a major religion only when Ashoka begins to spread it. He's a leader of the Mauryan dynasty, if you remember, and he will spread the religion throughout India and then throughout the Southeast Asia. And it was a good thing he did this because the religion would have died out otherwise. When Hinduism reformed and actually absorbs a lot of the Buddhist culture. So Buddha will become a version or reincarnation of the god Vishnu. And so that causes people to go, oh, hey, Hinduism's reforming, we're back into that. It was all part of Hinduism this whole time. So in India, it gets reabsorbed back into Hinduism, but outside of India, it stays Buddhism. And you have two major branches that will evolve. One is called Theravada Buddhism. This is the kind of original kind of Buddhism where you follow the practices of Buddha. It is very self-centered, that it is you and only you that can decide whether you're going to reach enlightenment or not. And you do this through going through a monastic lifestyle. You live a very humble life. And so you stay in that monastery, you work on your meditations, you work on getting your mindset right, trying to get rid of any material needs that you need. And the one interesting thing with this is they don't focus on a God because the God doesn't necessarily matter. So if there's an overarching spirit or a God or whatever, that's not your focus. Your focus is on how do you fix your mindset so that you can reach nirvana. On the other hand, Mahayana develops because of a split in the philosophy in that, or split in the beliefs of it, that people can really achieve this on their own. Instead, these people in Mahayana, which will become the most popular one, believe that you need some help. And this is what really spreads and gets people going because it will absorb, similar to Hinduism, other gods. And these gods will become bodhisattvas or guides, and they will help guide people to enlightenment. And so it's polytheistic, but also kind of monistic at the same time, and that it's all for the overarching spirit. And so these bodhisattvas are there to help people reach enlightenment, and it will spread throughout Southeast Asia. China will be a major area of it, with Tibet having the largest group of following it, and it will spread and evolve from there